In a quiet suburban town in America, where the streets were lined with neat rows of houses and trees swayed gently in the breeze, life moved at a slow pace. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the sidewalks as children made their way home from school. Among them was Maya Johnson, an 11-year-old girl with bright brown eyes and a cheerful smile that could light up any room. She walked briskly, her backpack bouncing lightly against her back, eager to get home and tell her mom about the science project she had just started. Maya loved her braids. They weren't just hair, they were part of who she was. Her mom, Elena, spent hours every week carefully weaving each braid into intricate patterns, making sure they looked perfect. To Maya, those braids represented care, love, and pride in her heritage. As she passed by neighbors on the sidewalk, some smiled warmly, while others barely noticed her presence. It was just another ordinary day, or so she thought. A few blocks away, Officer Greg Dawson sat in his patrol car, tapping his fingers impatiently on the steering wheel. He wasn't having a good day. Earlier that morning, someone had vandalized a local store, spray painting graffiti all over its walls. Chief Reynolds had chewed him out for not being more proactive, and now Dawson felt like he needed to prove himself. His eyes scanned the streets through the windshield, searching for anything or anyone that seemed out of place. That's when he spotted Maya. She was walking alone, her head down slightly as she adjusted the strap of her backpack. Dawson frowned. Something about her caught his attention. The way her braids swung as she walked, how her uniform skirt fluttered in the wind. In his mind, these details didn't fit the image of what he thought a normal kid should look like. Without giving it much thought, he pulled the car over to the curb and stepped out. "Hey, you," Dawson called out, his voice sharp and commanding. Maya stopped in her tracks, startled. She turned to see the officer approaching her, his tall frame looming over her small one. Her heart began to race. What did he want? Had she done something wrong? "Yes, sir?" Maya replied hesitantly, clutching the strap of her backpack tighter. Dawson crossed his arms and narrowed his eyes. "What's your name, kid?" "Maya," she stammered, unsure why he was asking. "Maya what?" he pressed, his tone growing harsher. "Maya Johnson," she said softly, trying to keep her voice steady despite the knot forming in her stomach. Dawson nodded slowly, as if committing the name to memory. Then he gestured toward her head. "What's going on with your hair? Those braids, are they real or are you hiding something in there?" Maya blinked, confused. "Hiding something?" "No, sir, these are just my braids." "Just your braids?" Dawson repeated, his lips curling into a sneer. "Look, we've had some trouble around here lately. Vandalism, theft, you name it. And kids like you always seem to be involved somehow." Maya's cheeks flushed red. Kids like her? What did that even mean? She wanted to argue, to tell him she hadn't done anything wrong. But fear rooted her feet to the ground. Instead, she simply shook her head. "I don't know anything about that, sir, I swear." Dawson didn't believe her. He leaned closer, inspecting her braids as though they might hold some secret evidence. "You expect me to believe that? These things are huge. You could be hiding all sorts of stuff in there." "I'm not hiding anything," Maya insisted, her voice trembling. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she fought hard to keep them from falling. This wasn't fair. Why was he picking on her? But Dawson wasn't listening anymore. His patience was wearing thin, and he decided to take matters into his own hands. Reaching for his utility belt, he pulled out a pair of scissors. Maya gasped, taking a step backward. "What are you doing?" she asked, panic rising in her chest. "This'll only take a second," Dawson muttered, grabbing hold of one of her braids before she could react. With a quick snip, he cut it off, letting the severed braid fall to the ground. Maya cried out, reaching up to touch her head in disbelief. Before she could say another word, Dawson moved to the next braid, cutting it just as easily as the first. "No, please stop," Maya begged, tears streaming down her face now. But Dawson ignored her pleas, continuing until several of her braids lay scattered on the sidewalk. When he finally stepped back, Maya stood frozen, staring at him in shock and horror. Her hands trembled as she tried to cover her damaged hair, feeling exposed and humiliated. "There. Now maybe people won't mistake you for someone causing trouble, Dawson said gruffly, slipping the scissors back into his belt. He gave her a dismissive glance before turning and heading back to his patrol car. Maya didn't move. She couldn't. The world around her felt distant, muffled, as though she were underwater. All she could hear was the sound of her own ragged breathing. After what felt like an eternity, she bent down and picked up one of the fallen braids, holding it tightly in her fist. Then, without looking back, she ran home as fast as her legs would carry her. When Maya burst through the front door, her mother, Elena, was in the kitchen preparing dinner. Hearing the commotion, she turned to see her daughter standing in the doorway, tears streaming down her face, clutching something in her hand. "Maya, sweetheart, what happened?" Elena asked, rushing to her side. Between sobs, Maya managed to explain everything: the encounter with the officer, the accusations, the scissors, and the humiliation. Elena listened in stunned silence, her heart breaking for her daughter. She hugged Maya tightly, whispering words of comfort, but inside, fury burned like wildfire. How dare someone treat her child this way? Elena knew they couldn't let this go unanswered. Picking up the phone, she dialed her husband Marcus at work. When he heard what had happened, the color drained from his face. For years, Marcus had worked tirelessly to provide for his family and shield them from the injustices of the world. But this time, there was no hiding from it. Someone had crossed a line, and Marcus vowed to make sure they paid for it. As night fell over the town, the Johnson household remained lit, filled with tension and whispered conversations. Outside, the streets grew quiet once again, oblivious to the storm brewing within the walls of one seemingly ordinary home. Little did anyone know, the events of that day would set off a chain reaction that would change not only the lives of the Johnsons, but also the fate of humanity itself. The house was unusually quiet that evening. Maya sat on the couch, her knees pulled up to her chest, staring blankly at the floor. Her mother, Elena, sat beside her, gently stroking her back in an effort to comfort her. The braids that had once been a source of pride now lay scattered on the coffee table, a painful reminder of what had happened earlier that day. Maya couldn't stop thinking about Officer Dawson's cold expression as he cut through her hair. It wasn't just the act itself, it was the way he looked at her, like she was less than human. Elena's heart ached for her daughter. She had always tried to prepare Maya for the harsh realities of the world, teaching her how to stand tall and proud despite the challenges they might face because of the color of their skin. But nothing could have prepared her for this. No amount of advice or pep talks could erase the hurt in Maya's eyes. Elena felt powerless, something she hated more than anything else. When Marcus finally arrived home, the tension in the room was palpable. He walked in with his usual calm demeanor, but it didn't take long for him to notice the somber mood. His eyes immediately fell on Maya, who looked smaller than ever, curled up on the couch. Without saying a word, he dropped his briefcase by the door and knelt in front of her. "Hey, sweetheart," Marcus said softly, placing a hand on her knee. "Mom told me what happened. Can you tell me about it?" Maya hesitated, glancing at her mom before meeting her father's gaze. Slowly, she began recounting the story, her voice wavering as she described every detail: the officer's accusations, the scissors, the humiliation. By the time she finished, tears were streaming down her face again. Marcus listened intently, his jaw tightening with each word. When Maya reached the part about the braids being cut off, his hands clenched into fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the sound of Maya's sniffles. Finally, Marcus stood up, pacing back and forth across the living room. His mind raced with thoughts of anger, frustration, and helplessness. How could someone treat his child like that? What gave them the right? Elena watched her husband carefully, knowing exactly what he was feeling. "Marcus," she said gently, breaking the silence. "We need to figure out what to do next." Marcus stopped pacing and turned to face her. "Do? There's nothing we can do, Elena. Not if we want to play by their rules. You know how these things go. We file a complaint, maybe get some vague apology if we're lucky, and then life goes back to normal, for everyone except us. Elena sighed, nodding reluctantly. She knew he was right. They'd seen it happen before, people of color speaking out against injustice, only to be ignored or dismissed. But letting this slide wasn't an option either. Not this time. What if we don't play by their rules? Elena asked quietly, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. Marcus raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What do you mean? Elena hesitated, glancing at Maya to make sure she wasn't listening too closely. Then she leaned in closer to her husband. You've worked hard your whole life to give us a better future, Marcus. You've built connections, earned respect, and even landed yourself in rooms most people can only dream of entering. Maybe it's time to use those resources for our family. Marcus frowned, considering her suggestion. He knew what she was hinting at. Over the years, he had climbed the ranks at NASA, becoming one of the lead engineers on groundbreaking projects. His work had earned him recognition not just within the agency, but also among influential figures in government and science. And, while he had always kept his professional life separate from his personal struggles, Elena was right. Maybe it was time to bridge the gap. But there was another factor to consider, one that even Elena didn't fully understand yet. I'll think about it, Marcus said finally, giving her a reassuring nod. For now, that was all he could promise. Later that night, after Maya had gone to bed, Marcus retreated to his study. Sitting at his desk, he opened his laptop and stared at the screen for a long moment. With a deep breath, he typed in a secure login and accessed files that very few people outside of NASA had ever seen. These weren't ordinary documents. They contained information about Project Horizon, a top-secret initiative Marcus had been leading for the past 3 years. Project Horizon was unlike anything humanity had attempted before. Its goal was to establish communication with extraterrestrial civilizations using advanced technology developed by NASA's brightest minds. Just weeks ago, the project had achieved a monumental breakthrough: contact with a species known as the Valons. The Valons were peaceful beings, curious about Earth and eager to learn more about its inhabitants. However, their interest came with conditions. They valued equality, justice, and mutual respect above all else. As Marcus scrolled through the files, he couldn't help but wonder how the Valons would react if they learned about what had happened to Maya. Would they see it as evidence of humanity's inability to treat each other fairly, or would they view it as an isolated incident, unworthy of judgment? A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Elena peeked her head in, concern etched on her face. Still working? She asked softly. Marcus nodded, closing the laptop. Just thinking. Elena stepped inside and closed the door behind her. About what? About whether I'm willing to risk everything, Marcus replied honestly. If I involve the Valons, or even hint at involving them, it won't just affect us. It could change the course of humanity's relationship with them forever. Elena sat down across from him, studying his expression. And if you don't? What happens then? Do we sit back and let this slide like it's nothing? Marcus sighed, running a hand over his face. I don't know, Elena. This isn't just about us anymore, it's bigger than that. They sat in silence for a while, both lost in their own thoughts. Eventually, Elena broke the quiet. Remember why you started working on this project in the first place, Marcus. Remember what you wanted to achieve, not just for yourself, but for everyone. If anyone deserves justice, it's Maya. Her words struck a chord deep within him. Marcus thought about Maya's bright smile, her love for science, her dreams of exploring the stars someday. He thought about the countless nights she had fallen, asleep reading books about space inspired by the stories her dad brought home from work. She deserved better than this. They all did. By the time morning arrived, Marcus had made up his mind. He called Dr. Samantha Lee, one of his closest colleagues at NASA, and arranged an emergency meeting. When he explained the situation to her, Sam's reaction was immediate. You can't be serious, she said, her voice low but urgent. This isn't just a local issue anymore, it's global. If the Valans find out, they will, Marcus interrupted firmly. Because I'm going to tell them. Sam stared at him, stunned. Are you sure about this? Once you bring them into it, there's no turning back. I'm sure, Marcus replied, his tone resolute. It's time someone held us accountable. Not just for Maya, but for everyone who's ever been treated like they don't matter. With Sam's reluctant support, Marcus prepared to take the next step. He drafted a message to the Valans, carefully choosing his words to convey both the gravity of the situation and his hope for understanding. As he hit send, a wave of uncertainty washed over him. He had no idea how the Valans would respond, or what consequences might follow. But he knew one thing for certain. Silence was no longer an option. That evening, as Marcus joined Elena and Maya for dinner, he felt a strange mix of fear and determination. He hadn't told them yet about his decision to involve the Valans, but he knew he would soon. For now, he focused on comforting his daughter, reminding her that she was loved and valued, no matter what anyone else might say or do. Little did they know the wheels of change were already in motion. Across galaxies, the Valans received Marcus's message and began discussing it among themselves. Their response would come sooner than expected, and when it did, it would leave an indelible mark on humanity's history. For the Johnson family, the fight for justice was far from over. But for the first time in a long time, they felt a glimmer of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. The next morning, Marcus woke up earlier than usual. He sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee in his hand, staring out the window as the sun began to rise. The events of the previous day played over and over in his mind like a broken record. Maya's tears, Elena's frustration, and his own anger. All of it weighed heavily on him. But now there was something else, a decision that couldn't be undone. He had sent the message to the Valans. It was done. There was no going back. As he sipped his coffee, Marcus thought about the Valans themselves. They were unlike any species humanity had ever encountered before. Their technology was far beyond anything Earth could produce, but what truly set them apart was their philosophy. The Valans believed in harmony, not just among themselves, but with every being they came into contact with. They valued fairness, respect, and equality above all else. When they first made contact with Earth, they didn't come as conquerors or traitors. They came as observers, curious about humanity's potential to join the galactic community. But curiosity wasn't enough. For the Valans, they wanted proof that humans were ready to coexist peacefully, ready to treat each other with dignity. And now, thanks to Officer Dawson's actions, humanity's flaws were laid bare for the Valans to see. Marcus knew the stakes were high. If the Valans decided that humanity wasn't worthy of their trust, the consequences could be catastrophic. Earth might lose its chance to form alliances with advanced civilizations, leaving it isolated and vulnerable in the vastness of space. On the other hand, if the Valans chose to intervene, it could force humanity to confront its darkest truths head-on. Either way, Marcus understood that his family, and especially Maya, was at the center of something much bigger than any of them. Later that day, Marcus met with Dr. Samantha Lee and 2 other members of the Project Horizon team at NASA headquarters. The meeting took place in a secure conference room, where the walls were lined with screens displaying complex data and images of distant stars. Everyone looked tense, their faces etched with worry. This wasn't just another routine update, it was a crisis. Okay, Sam began, breaking the silence. Let's go over this again. You told the Valans about the officer cutting Maya's hair? Marcus nodded. Yes, I explained the situation and emphasized that it wasn't an isolated incident. It's part of a larger pattern of discrimination and inequality here on Earth. And what exactly did you hope to accomplish by telling them? Asked Dr. Robert Carter, one of the senior scientists on the team. His tone wasn't accusatory, but it was clear he was skeptical. I hoped they'd understand the context, Marcus replied firmly. If we want the Valans to take us seriously as partners, We need to show them that we're willing to acknowledge our problems and work to fix them. Dr. Emily Torres, another member of the team, leaned forward in her chair. But Marcus, you know how sensitive they are about issues like this. Remember their initial assessment of Earth? They flagged systemic inequality as one of our biggest barriers to joining the galactic community. I know, Marcus said, rubbing his temples. And that's why I had to tell them. Hiding this wouldn't have helped anyone. If anything, it would have made things worse when they inevitably found out on their own. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed his words. They all knew he was right. The Valance surveillance systems were incredibly advanced. Chances were they had already observed the incident involving Maya and Officer Dawson. By coming forward, Marcus had taken control of the narrative, presenting it in a way that highlighted humanity's willingness to improve rather than hide from its mistakes. Still, uncertainty lingered in the air. No one could predict how the Valans would respond. Would they see Marcus's honesty as a sign of strength, or would they view it as further evidence of humanity's inability to govern itself? After the meeting ended, Marcus returned home, feeling drained but determined. When he walked through the door, Elena greeted him with a worried look. "How did it go?" she asked. "As well as can be expected," Marcus replied, setting his bag down. "They're concerned, but they understand why I did it." Elena nodded, though her expression remained troubled. "What happens now?" "We wait," Marcus said simply. "The Valans are reviewing the information I sent them. Depending on their decision, we'll know soon whether this changes anything or everything." That evening, the Johnsons gathered around the dinner table. Maya seemed quieter than usual, picking at her food without much enthusiasm. Elena tried to lighten the mood by talking about plans for the weekend, but the tension in the room was hard to ignore. Even Marcus struggled to find the right words to comfort his daughter. "Maya," he said finally, breaking the silence, "I want you to know that what happened to you wasn't your fault. None of it was okay, and it never will be. But sometimes, bad things happen because people don't understand each other. That's why it's so important to keep standing strong, to show them who you really are." Maya looked up at him, her eyes wide with curiosity. "What do you mean, Dad?" Marcus hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Well, remember those books I used to read to you about space? About how there are other worlds out there full of amazing creatures and ideas?" Maya nodded slowly. "Yeah. Well, some of those worlds aren't just stories anymore," Marcus continued. "We've been talking to one of them, a group called the Valans. They're very smart, and they care about fairness. So I told them about what happened to you because I think they need to know." Maya's eyes widened even more. "You told aliens about me?" Marcus chuckled softly. "In a way, yes. Not because I wanted to embarrass you, but because I believe they can help make things better. For you, for our family, and maybe even for everyone." For a moment, Maya didn't say anything. Then a small smile crept onto her face. "Do you think they'll like me?" Marcus grinned, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "Of course they will. How could anyone not?" Despite the uncertainty hanging over them, the conversation brought a sense of calm to the household. For the first time in days, Maya seemed to feel a little lighter, as though the weight of what had happened was beginning to lift. Meanwhile, light years away, the Valans convened in their council chamber. Unlike human meetings, which often involved heated debates and raised voices, the Valans communicated through a combination of telepathic signals and soft, melodic tones. Each member of the council shared their thoughts and observations, discussing the implications of Marcus's message. One elder, known as Zelthar, spoke up. "This incident reflects deeply ingrained prejudices within human society. However, it also demonstrates an individual's courage to expose these flaws. Perhaps this is a turning point, an opportunity for growth." Another council member, Lirvan, added, "Humans are young, both as a species and in their understanding of unity. Yet they possess potential. Should we guide them toward progress or withdraw until they prove themselves capable?" The discussion continued late into the night, with the council weighing the risks and rewards of intervening. Ultimately, they reached a consensus. They would respond, but not in the way humanity might expect. Back on Earth, life moved forward as the Johnsons waited anxiously for news. Days turned into a week, and still, there was no word from the Valens. Just when Marcus began to wonder if they had ignored his plea entirely, something extraordinary happened. It started with a faint hum, barely noticeable at first. People around. The world reported hearing the sound, describing it as both soothing and strange. Then, without warning, every television, radio, and internet-connected device switched on simultaneously. A holographic image appeared, shimmering in living rooms, offices and public spaces everywhere. The figure was tall and slender, with iridescent skin that glowed softly under the light. Its voice resonated clearly, speaking in perfect English. "People of Earth," it began, "we are the Valens. We have observed your world closely, admiring your creativity and resilience. However, we have also seen divisions and injustices that hinder your progress. Today we address one such act, a child treated unfairly because of her appearance. This behavior does not reflect the values we seek in partners." As the broadcast continued, shockwaves rippled across the globe. Protests erupted in cities worldwide, demanding justice for Maya and systemic reform. Meanwhile, Officer Dawson became a symbol of prejudice, losing his job and facing widespread condemnation. For the Johnsons, the Valens' intervention marked the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with challenges, but also hope. Humanity had been given a second chance, and it was up to them to seize it. The Valens' message spread like wildfire across the globe. Within minutes, billions of people had heard their words, spoken in a calm yet firm tone that left no room for misunderstanding. The holographic figure stood tall and radiant, its presence both awe-inspiring and humbling. As it addressed humanity, the world seemed to hold its breath. "We are the Valens," the being repeated, its voice echoing through every device capable of transmitting sound or image. "We observe your actions, your struggles, and your hopes. We seek partners who value fairness, kindness, and unity. Yet we have witnessed acts of cruelty and division, acts that harm not only individuals, but also the collective spirit of your species." The Valen paused, its glowing form shimmering softly as though weighing the gravity of its next words. "Recently, we learned of an incident involving a young girl named Maya Johnson. She was treated unjustly because of her appearance. Her hair, a symbol of her identity and heritage, was cut without her consent by someone entrusted with protecting others. This act is unacceptable. It reflects a failure to respect the dignity of all beings, a principle we hold sacred." The broadcast continued, explaining the importance of equality and mutual respect in building relationships, not just among humans, but between humanity and other civilizations. The Valens emphasized that they were willing to help Earth grow, but only if its people demonstrated a genuine commitment to change. They ended their message with a warning. "Your actions will determine whether you are ready to join us as equals. Choose wisely." When the transmission ended, silence fell over the world, for a brief moment. Then, chaos erupted. News outlets scrambled to cover the unprecedented event, replaying the Valens' message endlessly while experts debated its implications. Social media platforms lit up with reactions ranging from disbelief to outrage to hope. Hashtags like "Your Justice for Maya" and "Equality Now" began trending worldwide, sparking conversations about racism, discrimination, and accountability. Protests sprang up in major cities almost instantly, with thousands of people taking to the streets to demand justice for Maya and systemic reform within law enforcement. At the center of it all was the Johnson family. Marcus, Elena, and Maya watched the news unfold from their living room, stunned by the sheer scale of the response. Reporters camped outside their house, eager to speak with them. Neighbors stopped by to offer support, some apologizing for not standing up sooner against injustice. Strangers sent messages of solidarity, sharing stories of their own experiences with discrimination. For the first time, Maya felt seen, not as a victim, but as part of something much bigger than herself. But not everyone reacted positively. Officer Greg Dawson became the face of humanity's flaws overnight. His name and photo appeared everywhere, accompanied by calls for his arrest and prosecution. Former colleagues distanced themselves from him, while online trolls flooded his social media accounts with hate messages. Isolated and vilified, Dawson tried to defend himself in interviews, claiming he had simply been doing his job. But his excuses only fueled the firestorm. Chief Reynolds, the head of the police department, found himself under intense scrutiny as well. Protesters gathered outside the station, chanting slogans and holding signs that read, "Protect and serve. Everyone and no justice, no peace." Faced with mounting pressure, Reynolds announced Dawson's immediate termination and launched an internal investigation into misconduct within the force. Still, many felt it wasn't enough. Amid the chaos, Marcus struggled with conflicting emotions. On one hand, he was relieved to see such widespread support for his daughter. The outpouring of love and solidarity gave him hope that humanity could rise above its divisions. On the other hand, he worried about the unintended consequences of involving the Valens. Their intervention had exposed Earth's deepest flaws on an interstellar stage, potentially damaging its reputation forever. "Do you think this is what you wanted?" Elena asked him one evening as they sat together in the kitchen. The noise from the protests outside filtered through the windows, a constant reminder of the storm raging beyond their walls. "I don't know," Marcus admitted, running a hand through his hair. "I just wanted justice for Maya. I didn't plan for all this." Elena sighed, leaning back in her chair. "It's too late to turn back now. What's done is done. All we can do is focus on moving forward and making sure Maya stays strong through it all." Marcus nodded, glancing toward the living room where Maya sat curled up on the couch, watching cartoons. Despite everything, she seemed to be handling the situation better than anyone expected. Friends from school visited regularly, bringing cards and gifts to cheer her up. Teachers reached out to offer support, promising to create a safe space for her when classes resumed. Even strangers sent letters and drawings telling her how brave she was. One afternoon, a reporter managed to bypass the crowd outside and knock on the Johnsons' door. Marcus answered cautiously, unsure whether to let them in. The woman introduced herself as Rachel Meyer, a journalist known for her investigative pieces on social justice issues. She assured Marcus she wasn't there to exploit Maya's story but to amplify it, to ensure the world understood the broader context behind the incident. After some deliberation, Marcus agreed to an interview, provided Maya felt comfortable participating. To his surprise, Maya nodded enthusiastically when he asked her. Sitting beside her parents, she spoke openly about her experience, her voice steady despite the weight of the topic. When Rachel asked how she felt about the global reaction, Maya smiled shyly. "It feels good," she said. "Like maybe something good can come out of this. People are listening." Rachel's article, titled "A Child's Courage Sparks Global Change," went viral almost immediately. It highlighted Maya's resilience, Marcus's determination, and Elena's unwavering support, painting a picture of a family united in the face of adversity. More importantly, it called attention to the systemic issues underlying the incident, urging readers to take action in their own communities. As the days passed, the movement gained momentum. Lawmakers introduced bills aimed at addressing racial profiling and police brutality. Schools implemented programs designed to promote diversity and inclusion. Nonprofit organizations partnered with local leaders to host workshops and discussions about prejudice and privilege. Everywhere, people began having difficult but necessary conversations about how to build a fairer, more compassionate society. Even the Valens took notice. Through their surveillance systems, they monitored Earth closely, observing the protests, debates, and reforms taking shape. While they remained cautious, they expressed cautious optimism about humanity's progress. In a follow-up message, they acknowledged the efforts being made and encouraged Earth to continue striving for improvement. "We see your determination," the Velan ambassador said during the second broadcast. "Change is never easy, but it is possible. We will watch and wait, hopeful that you will prove yourselves worthy of joining us as equals." For the Johnsons, life slowly began returning to some semblance of normalcy. The protests outside their home eventually died down. Though the impact of the movement lingered, Maya returned to school, greeted by teachers and classmates who went out of their way to make her feel welcome. Elena threw herself into advocacy work, partnering with organizations dedicated to fighting discrimination. And Marcus resumed his duties at NASA, balancing his professional responsibilities with his role as a father thrust into the spotlight. Still, reminders of the incident were everywhere. Every time Maya looked in the mirror, she saw the uneven patches where her braids used to be. Every news segment about the protests brought back memories of that fateful day. But instead of letting those reminders drag her down, Maya chose to see them as symbols of strength. She carried herself with pride, knowing she had inspired millions to stand up for what was right. One evening, as the family sat around the dinner table, Marcus raised his glass in a toast. "To Maya," he said, smiling at his daughter. "You've shown the world what courage looks like. I couldn't be prouder of you." Maya grinned, raising her glass of juice. "To us," she replied. "And to making things better for everyone." They clinked glasses, laughter filling the room. Outside, the stars twinkled brightly in the night sky, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, light could shine through. For the Johnsons, the journey was far from over, but for the first time, in a long time, they felt hopeful about the future. Weeks turned into months and the world continued to change. The Velan's intervention had sparked a movement that refused to fade away. Protests evolved into organized campaigns, and hashtags transformed into real-world actions. Communities came together to address long-standing issues of inequality and injustice. People who had once been silent began speaking up, sharing their stories and demanding accountability. It was as though the incident involving Maya had opened a door that couldn't be closed again. For the Johnson family, life remained a mix of challenges and triumphs. Maya became a symbol of resilience, her name mentioned alongside other young activists who had inspired change. Schools invited her to speak at assemblies, and local organizations honored her with awards for bravery. At first, Maya felt nervous about being in the spotlight, but with her parents' encouragement, she grew more confident. She realized that her story wasn't just about her. It was about everyone who had ever been treated unfairly because of who they were. Marcus and Elena did their best to shield Maya from the pressures of fame while supporting her desire to make a difference. They taught her how to navigate interviews, public appearances, and even online criticism. "You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders," Marcus told her one evening after a particularly draining day. "But if you want to use your voice to help others, we'll always be here to back you up." Elena took on a leadership role in a coalition working to reform law enforcement practices. She collaborated with lawyers, activists, and community leaders to draft policies aimed at reducing racial profiling and increasing transparency. Her work kept her busy, but she made sure to prioritize family time, knowing how important it was for Maya to feel grounded during such a turbulent period. Meanwhile, Marcus returned to his duties at NASA, though his focus shifted slightly. He spent more time advocating for diversity within the agency, pushing for programs that encouraged underrepresented groups to pursue careers in science and technology. He believed that space exploration shouldn't just belong to a select few, it should reflect the richness of humanity as a whole. Despite these positive developments, not everything was smooth sailing. Officer Greg Dawson's case dragged on in court, drawing widespread attention. His lawyers argued that he had acted within his authority, while prosecutors painted him as a symbol of systemic racism. The trial became a national spectacle, with people tuning in daily to watch the proceedings. For many, it wasn't just about Dawson. It was about holding institutions accountable for perpetuating inequality. During one tense courtroom session, Maya testified via video link. Sitting beside her parents, She described the events of that day in calm, measured tones. When the defense attorney tried to discredit her account, Marcus stepped in, reminding the court that this wasn't just about one officer, it was about patterns of behavior that needed to stop. The jury deliberated for days before delivering a guilty verdict, sentencing Dawson to probation and mandatory sensitivity training. While some viewed the punishment as too lenient, others saw it as a step toward meaningful reform. As the legal battle unfolded, the Valens maintained their vigilance. Through their surveillance systems, they monitored Earth's progress, observing both the successes and setbacks. They issued occasional updates, praising initiatives like policy reforms and educational programs, while cautioning against complacency. Change requires constant effort, one ambassador said during a broadcast. Do not mistake temporary victories for permanent solutions. The Valens also emphasized the importance of unity, not just among humans, but between Earth and other civilizations. They announced plans to send representatives to meet with human leaders, marking the beginning of formal diplomatic relations. This news sent waves of excitement and apprehension across the globe. Some feared what might happen if negotiations went poorly, while others dreamed of the possibilities that could arise from collaboration. Back home, the Johnsons prepared for the arrival of the Valon delegation. Marcus played a key role in organizing the event, working closely with government officials and scientists to ensure everything ran smoothly. He knew this moment carried immense significance, not only for humanity, but also for his family. The Valons had chosen to engage with Earth partly because of Maya's courage, and now she would have the chance to meet them face to face. On the day of the meeting, crowds gathered outside the designated venue, a massive dome-like structure designed specifically for interstellar diplomacy. Security was tight with checkpoints and barriers lining the streets. Inside, dignitaries from around the world awaited the Valons' arrival, dressed in their finest attire. Reporters jockeyed for position, eager to capture every detail of the historic encounter. Maya stood beside her parents near the front of the room, her heart racing with anticipation. She wore a dress made especially for the occasion, adorned with intricate patterns that reflected her heritage. Her hair, which had grown back somewhat, was styled into new braids woven with colorful beads. As she looked around at the sea of faces, she felt a mixture of pride and nervousness. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the chance to thank the beings who had given her voice wings. Finally, the doors opened, and the Valons entered. Their forms shimmered with an ethereal glow, their movements graceful and deliberate. The room fell silent as they approached the podium, their presence commanding respect without intimidation. One of the ambassadors stepped forward, addressing the assembly in a melodic yet clear voice. "We are honored to stand before you today," the Valon began. "Your willingness to confront difficult truths has impressed us. Though much work remains, we believe humanity possesses the potential to grow and thrive alongside other species." The ambassador then turned its gaze toward Maya, who froze momentarily before stepping forward. Marcus gave her a gentle nudge, whispering, "It's okay. You've got this." Taking a deep breath, Maya walked up to the podium, standing eye to eye with the towering figure. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Maya broke the silence. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "Thank you for listening to me and for helping people understand what happened. I didn't think anyone would care, but you showed me that they do." The Valon tilted its head slightly, as if studying her intently. "You are brave, Maya Johnson," it replied. "Bravery is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to act despite it. Your courage has inspired countless others. Remember that you are never alone." Tears welled up in Maya's eyes as she nodded. Behind her, Marcus and Elena exchanged proud smiles, their hearts swelling with emotion. The room erupted in applause, the sound echoing off the walls like a symphony of hope. After the ceremony ended, the Valons stayed behind to meet privately with key figures, including Marcus and his family. They discussed future collaborations, ranging from scientific research to cultural exchanges. The Valons expressed interest in learning more about Earth's traditions and values, emphasizing the importance of mutual understanding in building lasting partnerships. As the sun set on that monumental day, the Johnsons returned home, exhausted, but exhilarated. Maya sat cross-legged on the living room floor, flipping through a photo album filled with pictures from the event. Each image captured a piece of history, a testament to the power of courage and compassion. "This is crazy," she murmured, shaking her head in disbelief. "I can't believe all of this started because of me." "It didn't start because of you," Elena corrected gently, sitting beside her. "It started because you refused to stay silent. That's what makes you special." Marcus leaned back, in his chair watching his wife and daughter with a contented smile. "And it's not over yet," he added. "This is just the beginning." Outside, the stars twinkled brightly in the night sky, their light stretching across unimaginable distances. Somewhere among them, the Vailans continued their journey, carrying with them the hope that humanity might one day join them as equals. For now, though, the Johnsons focused on the present, on healing, growing, and dreaming of a brighter future. Change wasn't easy, and it certainly wasn't quick. But as Maya drifted off to sleep that night, she knew one thing for sure. No matter what challenges lay ahead, she and the world were headed in the right direction. Months passed, and the world continued to evolve. The Vailans' arrival had left an indelible mark on humanity, sparking conversations that reached every corner of the globe. People from all walks of life began rethinking their beliefs, challenging old systems and imagining new possibilities. It wasn't always easy. There were setbacks, disagreements, and moments of doubt, but progress was undeniable. Slowly but surely, the seeds of change planted by Maya's courage began to take root. For the Johnson family, life settled into a rhythm of purpose and hope. Maya returned to school, her confidence bolstered by the support she received from her peers and teachers. Friends who had once been distant now went out of their way to include her in activities, eager to learn more about her culture and experiences. Her classroom became a space for open discussions about fairness, respect, and standing up for what's right. Even her science teacher, inspired by her love for space exploration, dedicated a lesson to the Vailans and their technology, encouraging students to dream big. At home, Marcus and Elena worked tirelessly to balance their roles as advocates and parents. Marcus threw himself into his work at NASA, helping to design programs that promoted diversity within the agency. He also collaborated with international teams to prepare for future missions involving the Vailans. These projects weren't just about advancing science. They were about building bridges between species and fostering understanding. Every day, he reminded himself why this work mattered, not just for humanity but for his daughter's generation. Elena, meanwhile, focused on grassroots efforts, traveling to different cities to speak at conferences and workshops. She shared stories of resilience and unity, urging people to confront uncomfortable truths about inequality. Her message resonated deeply, inspiring others to take action in their own communities. Though it meant long hours and time away from home, she knew it was worth it. When she returned each evening, Maya would greet her with a hug, asking about her adventures and sharing updates from her own life. Despite the positive changes, challenges remained. Officer Greg Dawson's trial had ended, but debates about accountability persisted. Some argued that his punishment wasn't severe enough, while others believed it set a precedent for addressing systemic issues within law enforcement. Either way, the incident served as a catalyst for reform. Police departments across the country implemented new training programs focused on cultural sensitivity and de-escalation tactics. Oversight committees were established to ensure transparency and fairness. While far from perfect, these measures represented steps toward a better future. The Vailans watched these developments closely, offering guidance when needed. Through periodic broadcasts, they encouraged humanity to keep pushing forward, reminding them that growth required patience and perseverance. "You are capable of greatness," one ambassador said during a message. "But greatness is not achieved overnight. Continue to listen, to learn, and to act." Their words resonated deeply, especially with Maya. She often thought about the Veilans' visit, their glowing forms, their melodic voices, and the kindness they showed her. They had treated her with respect and dignity, seeing her not as a victim but as a beacon of hope. That memory stayed with her, fueling her determination to make a difference. One afternoon, Maya sat at the kitchen table working on a school project. The assignment was simple: write about someone who inspires you. For most kids, choosing a subject was easy: a parent, a celebrity, or a historical figure. But for Maya, the answer came naturally. She wrote about the Veilans, describing how their intervention had changed the world and her life. As she finished the essay, Marcus walked in and glanced over her shoulder. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," he said, smiling. "Do you think you'll share it with your class?" Maya nodded. "Yeah, I want them to know how important it is to stand up for each other. If we don't, nothing will ever change." Marcus ruffled her hair affectionately. "You're already changing things, Maya, just by being yourself." Later that week, Maya stood nervously in front of her classmates, holding her paper. As she began reading, her voice wavered slightly, but she quickly found her rhythm. By the time she finished, the room was silent. Then applause broke out, followed by questions and comments. Her teacher praised her for her insight, calling her essay a reminder of what's possible when we come together. The response gave Maya a renewed sense of purpose. She realized that even small actions could have a ripple effect, inspiring others to do the same. Whether it was speaking up in class, volunteering at community events, or simply treating people with kindness, she understood that every effort counted. Meanwhile, the relationship between Earth and the Veilans grew stronger. Diplomatic meetings became routine, with representatives from both sides collaborating on initiatives ranging from environmental conservation to interstellar research. Humanity's first joint mission with the Veilans, a probe designed to explore distant galaxies, launched successfully, marking a milestone in galactic cooperation. Back on Earth, celebrations erupted, uniting people from all backgrounds in shared excitement. Marcus played a key role in the mission, overseeing its development alongside Veilan engineers. Though the work was demanding, he cherished the opportunity to contribute to something greater than himself. On launch day, the entire Johnson family gathered at NASA headquarters, watching as the rockets soared into the sky. Maya clapped excitedly, her eyes wide with wonder. "This is amazing," she whispered, turning to her dad. "Do you think I'll get to go to space someday?" Marcus grinned, placing a hand on her shoulder. "If anyone can do it, it's you. Just keep dreaming, Maya." As the months went by, the impact of the Veilans' influence became clearer. Cities introduced policies aimed at reducing inequality. Schools revamped curriculums to emphasize empathy and inclusion, and businesses prioritized diversity in hiring practices. Art and music flourished, reflecting themes of unity and hope. Even social media transformed, becoming a platform for constructive dialogue rather than division. Still, the journey wasn't without obstacles. There were moments of resistance, backlash, and frustration. Not everyone embraced the changes willingly, and some clung to outdated beliefs. But for every person who resisted, there were dozens ready to push back, refusing to let progress stall. Through it all, the Johnsons remained steadfast. They celebrated victories, mourned losses, and supported each other through uncertainty. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, grounded in love and a shared commitment to making the world better. One evening, as the family sat together under the stars, Maya looked up at the night sky. "Do you think the Veilans are watching us right now?" she asked. "Probably," Marcus replied, chuckling softly. "They're probably pretty impressed." Elena smiled, wrapping an arm around Maya. "They should be. You've shown them and everyone else what it means to be brave." Maya leaned into her mom's embrace, feeling a deep sense of peace. She didn't need to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders anymore. Instead, she carried something far more powerful: hope. Hope that humanity could rise above its flaws. Hope that kindness could overcome cruelty. And hope that one day Earth would truly belong among the stars. As the wind rustled through the trees and the constellations twinkled above, the Johnsons sat quietly, savoring the moment. They knew the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, but they also knew they weren't alone. Together, with the help of allies like the Valons and countless others, they were shaping a future filled with possibility.